Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my co-host, Lance LaDuke, who is in a well-lit room. What's going on?
First of all, I don't have the flashing thing that says recording that I usually do. Are we recording?
We are recording.
Okay, just making sure, because I usually see flashing lights whenever I look at you.
That's because
and
you're
now
usually
it's just
dark.
you. Maybe
You're
that's
usually
what it is. It's a
in
beacon.
A dungeon. Yes.
So what happened is my son moved. He went to college, and he's moved into a house with whatever, you don't care. And so, but now all of the kids are out of the house.
I love your son. And I
do too.
Yeah,
exactly. And I thought, well, why am I in the basement where it's cold and dark? And he has a perfectly fine. In fact, there's 3 other bedrooms here that I could be inhabiting. Maybe I'll move from empty room to empty room over time. But I can tell you that to have it's a life changer to have a actual windows and temperature control. So I feel like a new man.
A lot of people do not know that Sam Palafian's studio at Boston University was in not just the basement, but was in the back corner of the basement. There were no windows. I mean, it was underground, but there was like a small window that he even had a poster up over. I mean, it was basically like
It was a closet, right? Wasn't it? I think originally it was supposed to be
like a closet. Yes, that was where the world-renowned Sam Palafian taught his college lessons. So for 2 decades.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty wild.
So I'm happy to be above ground. I can tell you that.
There you go.
Yep.
So we have an announcement to make, Lance. Today's guest is David Zerkel.
That's a good announcement. Wow.
He was amazing, right?
Huge.
Yeah.
He was amazing. Yeah. He was. Yeah. It was. I'm not used to when we get deep, but we got deep, and then we got deep on the bonus episode. But we'll get into the why of it. But
yeah, it was great. It was so.
I thought it was pretty poignant,
therapeutic to talk to him.
Thought so too.
Yeah, he's had a lot happen since he was on with episode 23, I believe it was, and which we had a mislabeled link. We're professionals over here. Don't worry about it. But the announcement is that we are doing a Brass Junkies Tuba workshop, which is going to be incredible. It's February 27th and 28th, Saturday and Sunday. Are you sitting down, Lance?
I hope so, because there's a chair under me.
Saturday is a warm-up class with Mike Roylance of the Boston Symphony
Orchestra.
Of him. A 1-hour clinic and question and answer session with Roger Bobo.
I heard of him.
And also a 1-hour clinic and Q&A with Velvet Brown.
I heard of her.
And then Sunday is a warm-up class with Deanna Swoboda.
I heard of her.
A 2-hour master class with Patrick Sheridan. Yeah, that name is not ringing a bell. He came highly recommended from someone. And then a 2-hour master class with David Zerkel.
Woot woot.
And a 1-hour Q&A and closing hang with us, the Brass Junkies. How about that?
Do we do the Q's or the A's?
We should ask all of the participants questions. I like that. That's pretty good. We are offering 1-day passes, which is just Saturday, a 2-day pass, which is Saturday and Sunday, or a performer pass, which is both of those days, plus you get to play in either the Pat or the Zerkel masterclass. And by the way, anybody who signs up for the 2-day pass or the performer pass gets a free Winning the Audition with Carol Yonch.
Hey, how about that?
Which she's going to do a deep dive on how she successfully prepared for her Philadelphia audition and share all of her secrets and strategies that she gives to her students all the time on both preparing for and taking auditions. That's getting sold separately.
Nice.
But that's going to be included for anybody on the 2-day pass or the performer pass. You can find out more at pedalomedia.com/tuba-workshop. And there is a very limited number of performer passes. So if you want one of those, grab one. And all of this is on sale, by the way, through February 9th. Both the 2-day pass and the performer pass are $20 off. and the 1-day Saturday pass is $10 off. Only through February 9th. So unless you hate money and just want to give us more, if you're going to go to this thing, grab it now. And last detail, the whole thing is available on demand all the way until May 1st. It's like 2 full months of, you can warm up with Roy Lance and Deanna as many times as you would like over those 2 months. I think it's going to be a really great event. So
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And there's also a music practice coach routine builder, which
that should be good. Who's doing that?
That you're doing that, actually.
Oh.
So that's going to be a standalone event as well, which we're going to announce. But
you'll come out the other side of that thing with a plan for the next period of time if you practice. So it's a based thing.
Yeah, I think that's going to be great. And anybody who signs up for the Performer Pass gets that included, thrown in, and gets an additional 90-minute masterclass with me. That's only for the 12 people who are doing the Performer Pass. So sign up now at pedalnotemedia.com/tuba-workshop. All right, Lance, I think that's it. This was a great conversation, and sadly, we get into this at the end of our conversation with Zerkel. This ended up being a long one, but we lost a dear friend this week, Dennis Askew, who's a former guest of the show and a good friend of each of ours individually and collectively of the Brass Junkies. He was a big fan of this show. Do you remember, actually, Lance, that he...
Probably not.
This is going to make you laugh. Because this is also Dennis, right? When he was going to be on, he listened to 10 interviews in preparation, right? Which is like, wait, why would you do that? You're talking to us knuckleheads. Like, what information did you think you were going to glean from that? And you asked him, Lance, you said, okay, and what was your impression? And he said, I didn't hate any of them.
Oh, that's sweet.
That is sweet. So,
not quite ready. I want to hear that again, but I need a little more.
Yeah.
Time, I think.
As we're sitting here recording this just happened a few days ago, and it was completely out of the blue. But we get into it with Zerkel, who was very good friends with Dennis as well, and all three of us at the end share our thoughts on him. And we're probably going to do more of that, down the road sometime for like a Brass Legacy project. I'm sure is going to feature him at some point. So. But a terrible, tragic loss for the tuba world, for the UNCG community, for the brass world in general. So, Dennis, you are dearly missed, and this episode is dedicated to him. So, without further ado, let us get to the conversation that we had with the University of Michigan's David Zerkel. Today on the Brass Junkies, we are joined by a world-renowned tuba player, a humanitarian, a spiritual guide to many of us, a thought leader. Lance, what's so funny? What am I forgetting? There's a few more titles, right?
Recovering leper, ornithologist, phrenologist, philatelist.
And his name is David Zerkel. How are you? Are you regretting this yet?
Oh, almost. Doing great. Nice to see you guys again. It always makes me smile to see you. And it makes me smile to hear you, but it's even goofier to see you.
I see what you did there.
I do like the one, I remember one of my fondest memories of you, and I can't remember if we told this before, was sitting next to you at a tuba conference, and you had to go to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and you asked what I was doing, and I had to do a chicken dance appearance on the River Bottom Quartet performance, and then Matthew Murchison had a recital, and he and Pat did a thing where they were wearing scuba gear or something, and I had a Hawaiian shirt and played ukulele, and that was what I had to do. And you just looked at me and you just went, I hate you. I was like, hey, man,
Yeah,
we choose the life we lead.
yeah. Those Tuba conferences were a real study in delegation. So as being the young guy, I kind of
It all rolled downhill.
Got the brunt of it.
And they also they tend to delegate as much as they think you can handle, which is why they had Lance doing a chicken dance and playing on a Murchison recital. So,
Yeah.
so
Joke's on somebody.
yeah. So Maestro Zerkel here was on the podcast a long time ago now. It's been many years. Lance is going to look up the number. We'll just pretend that I looked it up before we started, because that would have been professional. But we were just joking about how many things have, like, massive headlines have changed in Zerkel's life here, and it's basically everything. But first of all, why don't you tell us where you're sitting right now? Because if you'd been sitting there for your first interview, you would have been trespassing. But now I believe you have a key. So where are you sitting right now?
People would have been pissed. I'm sitting in my studio at the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance. I would love to report that it's the same studio that Professor Kenzig and Professor Torchinsky taught in, but Dave Jackson, my trombone colleague, realized that I got here, I was the new guy, and he could get the bigger office. So I'm in Dave Jackson's office, but it has the same je ne sais quoi. It's the exposed brick and the stained carpet, so it's all good. Yeah, so happy to be here.
And this is your first year there, correct?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
It is indeed, yeah.
What's it been like starting?
Have you met anybody?
Yeah.
No, I haven't met anybody. I have no idea what it's like. No, it's the School of Music has been very permissive a little bit with what we're allowed to do in terms of teaching. When I look at my colleagues around the country, I see people with playing instruments in bags and playing through slits and masks and playing on the other side of a gym and doing all sorts of things. We're allowed to teach in the studio as long as we're 12 feet apart. If we're playing, we don't need to have a mask on. So pretty much when the student comes through the door, we establish our territory, and everybody we mark our territory, and then everybody stays 12 feet apart, and we just go in business like usual. So it's been nice to be able to see people in person and to teach in person. I've got the studio is last semester was 15-ish, and I taught 11 in person, and 4 chose to stay home where they were, because Ann Arbor is an expensive town if you're a student, and so a lot of people have chosen to save some money and stay home. So, but it's been great though.
When you say 15-ish, is that because there's like 16 people in the studio, but one's only there physically, and you don't consider them like a legitimate part of the studio, or?
I plead the Fifth Amendment.
Let's name some names, Dave. So what a wild time to take over. I mean, any job, but I mean, yeah, what a wild time.
Yeah, it's just it is unique. I mean, it's very frequently I think of the poor kids who were like high school seniors last year and college freshmen this year. Man, they're really getting the short end of the stick. It's been strange. I mean, I haven't seen many of my colleagues in person. I've seen some of the faculty members who have an office very close to mine. I've had beers with one of my colleagues where it was, I think it was October, and I said, hey, I'm out in Dexter. Do you want to grab a beer? And he said, yeah. And so I was like wearing a sweatshirt, and I said, inside or outside? He said, oh, definitely outside. So here I was with my sweatshirt on, and when we left, it was like 41 degrees outside, and my timbers are shivering, and I learned a little bit about the Michigan way of yeah, it's 20 degrees, we can eat outside. That sounds good. So, but anyway, it's been nice to get to know people via Zoom. My colleagues seem like lovely people. I'm sure that's going to hold up when I see them in
They
person.
always do.
Give
Yeah.
it time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too bad the mute button doesn't transfer to real life.
Right?
Oh, well, I've had some mute stories with people not being on mute that have been fascinating. I actually kicked around the idea of regaling you with one of those stories today, but in order to protect the guilty, I've decided not to. So, but some people need to learn when mute is on and mute is off. Here, let me just give you a preview. I won't tell the whole story. Yeah. Okay. So it's Monday. We have seminar, and somebody zooms into the meeting and says, "All right, I got to go to stupid masterclass now. At least I don't have to be there in person. Maybe I'll just turn my camera off and practice." And I said, "That's the opposite of sucking up."
He got half of sucking up, right?
Yes, he did.
Wow. That's
Yeah. So that was heartwarming for me.
So that's why you have around 15
15
Yes, exactly. Ish.
ish. Yeah, that's pretty good. Wow.
That is pretty good.
Eh.
That is. There's been some.
Morale is at an all-time level.
Yeah.
There you go.
How was studio class? It was whelming.
Yes. I was over.
That's right.
So, what's it like taking over a studio? I mean, a job with a position with a pedigree, as you just said, the names that you listed. I mean, it's kind of there's no gaps for a long time in that timeline of excellence. So, what does that feel like?
Oh, it's nice. I mean, over the years, I've I hate to say this in front of Lance, who's a Michigan State graduate, because Michigan State has kind of the same thing going on right now. But it's the whole idea of, when you see the University of Michigan next to an applicant's name, like when I was teaching at Georgia, it was like, oh, let's sit up and pay attention to this one, because the kids here are generally pretty bright, and the legacy is long, and it was. But it's delightful to kind of continue that legacy. I'm not Abe Twerczynski, nor am I Fritz Kenzig, but hopefully the school will allow me to be Dave Zerkel, and hopefully that'll be good enough, and I can carry on the tradition for a little while longer. So
Wow, man.
it's good. I've had a nice opportunity to get to know Fritz. So Fritz and I have been cordial over the years, but haven't really spent much time together. So we've gotten together a couple of times for outdoor beers and stories, and it's been really nice. And he's been super supportive in helping me get adjusted and to learn the ropes of how they do things here, which is a little different than how they do things at UGA. So,
Wow.
What would you say the biggest differences are?
oh, well, I'll tell you, when I interviewed, one of my chief questions was, let me ask you a question about your admissions process, because I know that you have admissions people embedded in the School of Music, which is true. There's a staff of 7 admissions people in the School of Music. And so the School of Music kind of drives their own bus a little bit as far as admissions go. And so my question when I interviewed was, all right, please tell me what the floor is. What GPA can a kid have, or SAT score can a kid have and still expect to get in? And they said, oh, I think maybe a 3.1 GPA is kind of like the bottom, and maybe an 1100 SAT. By the time I left Georgia, the admissions office was turning down kids that had 3.9s and was turning down kids. I have a very famous story of a lovely tuba player that I really wanted to have come to school at UGA. He had a 1530 SAT, and the admissions office turned him down. And it's like, and he was a monster player, and it's like, good God! And so it began to be really hard to sustain a great studio at UGA if you couldn't get the kids you wanted into the door. So I'm in the middle of my first admissions cycle now. I've got interviews with the students this week. We did Zoom auditions this year, not Zoom auditions. We did video auditions. They recorded everything, and then we evaluated that, and then the live audition. And for me, it's just going to be an interview,
Sure.
But anyway, it's nice to know that I will have a little bit more leeway into getting students that I really want to have come into the school, and that was a big deal because I banged on my desk a lot at Georgia about the admissions problem. Now the provost of Georgia is a Michigan man, and the new director of the School of Music at Georgia thinks they're going to be able to make some good progress with saying, why don't we do it the Michigan way, where how good a student is actually has some say as to whether they get into university. So
that's a weird thing to correlate.
Yeah. Andrew, I was listening to your interview with Dennis the other day, and I cracked up at the story about you not applying to Arizona State.
I forgot that story was in that. Oh wow! So that one's that's
a good story. That's a great story.
And
Sam had to be some sort of master musician to pull that one off.
We are going to circle back to share our thoughts on the untimely, doesn't even begin to scratch the surface, passing suddenly this week of Dennis Askew, who was a dear friend of all of ours. But yeah, that episode with him is wonderful. I forgot that I shared that story. It's a doozy. So I want to circle back because I want to say something about Fritz Kenzig, your predecessor at Michigan, because I think that this kind of exemplifies how remarkable he is as a person. And I haven't interacted with him a lot, but anybody who has says that this is par for the course. Boston Brass. Lance, were you in the band when we did a master class at the University of Michigan? Anyway, yeah,
I don't know.
I knew he was going to say that. That's why I asked. I
was in Boston Brass.
We went and did.
I play the trombone.
Nobody ever said that.
No, nobody ever said that. He operated one. So we had a class at, I believe it was 7 p.m. and at 6:55, Fritz comes backstage to introduce himself to me. And he wanted to let me know that he had that there was a doctoral recital at 7:30 that he was on the committee for, that he had to go to. But he wanted me to know that he was going to be in the back and that he was really happy that we were there. And thank you for everything that you're about to do. And just know that I am going to duck out because I can't miss this thing. And so, best of luck. Boy, if you want to talk about an excuse to not go to, and a place like Michigan's got people coming through all the time. Geez, you've got to, first of all, you don't need an excuse, but there's a baked in one, right? Like, I have a doctoral recital at the same time. He came back, shook my hand, said thank you, explained, and then even waved from the back of the hall as he ducked out at 7:28. So yeah, that was very impressive to me.
Yeah, he's a good human.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yep. So are you, Dave Zerkel.
Oh, I don't know.
Most of the time.
I don't know.
You have a higher batting average than most people, but that's not really a high bar these days. But
no, it's not.
Speaking of not a very high bar, I'd like to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium mouthpiece.
Yeah! You've made it.
Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This week, let's send them to the website, Lance, to send some emails to Michael. How about this? How about everyone should email Michael with your third favorite interaction that you've ever had with David Zerkel, and I especially want you, if you've never had any, you should definitely email. Just make one up. It can be about absolutely anything at all. Like he was the coach of your T-ball team, whatever, whatever works. So I think that's a good one. So another major development since you were on the show, which because I looked it up ahead of time, I know is episode 22, not because Lance put it in the show notes.
It's actually worse than that. I was going to. It's actually episode 23, but the link has in episode 22. So I was going to point that out. That's our crack team responsible for making that happen. It's what made us what we are today.
So on episode 24, we interviewed Zerkel, and you had major heart surgery between now. I mean, like we're not joking that like basically his entire world is different than it was when we talked to him last. So tell the people that don't know about that, and then talk about that, because that was pretty scary. It was scary for me in Virginia. I'm assuming it was slightly more scary for you. But yeah, tell everybody what happened.
Heart surgery.
Yeah, and Andrew, I want to thank you. You were one of the people that came down and taught some lessons for me when I was recuperating, and,
yes.
and I know my studio got a lot out of that. It was
awesome.
it was a great opportunity for my. It's a shame I had to like nearly die for it to happen, but it was a great opportunity for my students to get a lot of points of view.
It was honor. It was an honor for you to include me on that list. So thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, it's very funny, guys, that you mentioned this, because I'm feeling my age a little bit, because I'm getting really bad with dates, especially dates that happened after the year 2000. It's just like a few years ago, and it's like, so my point of reference between 2007 and 2016 is itty bitty. So anyway, I'm just going to say a while ago, once upon a time, when I was in the Army, I had some issues where I had a little heart trouble and some chest pains once, and they ran me down to the clinic and they said, "Oh yeah, what's going on is not normal in your EKG, so let's get you up to Bethesda at the time, which is now Walter Reed, and get some pictures made and see what's going on." So at that point, I realized they did some tests, and I have a bicuspid aortic valve, which your aortic valve is supposed to have 3 cusps. It should look like a Mercedes logo, but mine looked like what's a good image of a pizza cut in half? Ugh. So anyway,
Don't ruin pizza for that, Dave.
Spicy meatball.
What the hell is wrong with you?
So anyway, it was only 2 cusps, and the cardiologist said, "Look, over time, there's gonna be some problem where you're gonna have some leakage," and she said, "Sometime in your 50s, I would anticipate that you're gonna need to have your valve replaced." And so I went on. I had no further trouble with my heart. I would go see the cardiologist on a yearly basis just so they could measure and see how we were doing. Well, there was one day where I woke up having some chest pains, and I was living by myself at the time, and I woke up in the morning and went, "Oh God, this feels awful," and I drove myself to the hospital, because who wants to pay for that $800 ambulance ride?
My dad did the same thing. My dad was driving to work and had started having a heart attack and was like, "I guess I better drive to the hospital."
Yeah,
walked in, he's like, "I think I'm having a heart attack."
Yeah, if you ever
get a lot of attention.
You do get a lot of attention. I felt like that's the most popular I've ever felt in my life that day. So I got myself to the hospital.
And this is number 2 right now, right? This is the second.
So I walked into the hospital and they said, "Yep, let's get you checked out." And so the guy came back and said, and because I explained what happened, and he said, "Oh, that makes me really nervous, because that's what you're describing sounds like in an aneurysm. And I'm like, oh, he said, yeah. And if that's the case, we need to be in a hurry. And it's like, oh no. So he came back and said, not an aneurysm, but you did have a heart attack. So there's evidence that you had a heart attack. So that earned me kind of a short stay in the hospital, and they did tests, and my arteries are clean, everything's good, I've got no crud, but they said it's time to have your valve replaced. So I went down to Emory Hospital in Atlanta and had the surgery. It's open heart surgery, pretty involved. They replaced my aortic valve. Pretty involved. Yeah.
Kind of, sort of like, there's like getting a haircut.
Yeah.
Just a little above that.
It's like getting styled with surgery.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just not a cut and blow dry. So anyway, they had to replace my aortic root, and so I had an option at the time.
I love that band.
Yeah, they are. That's so funny because every time I say a stupid phrase, one of two things comes out of my mouth. That's a great name for a band, or that's what they used to call me in high school.
High school, yeah.
So anyway, I went and had the surgery, and it was a big ordeal. And when I was in recovery, there were 2 times where I got paddled back into existence. I was like just eating my breakfast or something, and all of a sudden I was gone. I can give you a report that I have no idea of what that was like, but just waking up to having a team of doctors and nurses around you, still holding paddles, going, oh, did something just happen here? And so
something I said?
Was it something? Yeah. So that happened twice while I was in recovery, and what they came to realize is they had nicked a major artery, and while they were doing the surgery,
What?
They had to go in and do an arthroscopic surgery where they repaired that. So it was a little worse than I thought it was going to be. And I was in the hospital, golly beef, I would probably say the better part of 2 weeks. And then I came back, and then I had to be off my feet, or slowly getting back on my feet for about 3 months before I could go back to work. And the recovery was slow. And so for any of you out there who are considering it, I can't recommend open heart surgery. It's not a good elective surgery, and it's not even a very good surgery otherwise. But
it's not outpatient.
But no, it is not. But I am still here to tell the story, so I feel like all's well that ends well. My health has been pretty good since then. No major concerns, and the little pig valve that's keeping my heart going right now will probably need to be replaced in about 10 years. But they said by that point, the science is probably going to be far enough along that's going to be an arthroscopic surgery, and we won't need to crack you open like a Maryland crab again. So,
and so coming back, I mean, that's no lie about the.
But now he's trying to ruin crabs. You ruined pizza. I hate you, Dave Zerkel.
Yeah. So they put your sternum back together, and eventually you go back to playing an instrument that requires a little bit of air.
Yeah, that was really hard.
What was the process like? How long did it take? How did you do it?
I'll never forget the first day I went back. I went back and it was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm gonna play again. I used the spirometer the whole time. They really encouraged me to use that while I was in recovery, and I did. And I'm not necessarily gifted in terms of lung capacity to start with. I'm a little short. I'm a little old, and I'm not taking in massive amounts of air. So I was discouraged with what I was seeing with the spirometer. But then when I went to actually take breaths to play, it was like, oh my, this hurts. And it was, I remember, I think I made a post on Facebook that day. I took a picture of my tuba next to my practice stand and said, it's like riding a bike uphill. And then I think Holtz pitched in with no seat.
Oh,
So
Tommy's always a poet.
yeah, so anyway, it really took a while to come back. I would say probably within I don't know, probably 6 weeks it took to where I felt really pretty normal. The funny thing was is that the flesh always stayed okay. The flesh was all right, and I'm always amazed, when people fret about taking a day off. It's like, no, your flesh remembers. You're going to be in pretty good shape. Even sometimes after taking a couple of weeks off, like on a vacation, when I come back, sometimes it's like, oh, this sounds a little better than when I left. And so for me, the lips never went away. It was just really basically, it took me a long time to get a really serviceable and good healthy breath in. So, but that's all better now. And now I just have the excuse that I take lousy breaths and I'm old. So,
would you say that no, this is going back to the Stone Ages when my dad was going through that, but they had all those spirometers and exercise things for him to use. Do you think that this helped in your recovery from the surgery? The fact that you do what you do for a living, do you think that aided in any way in terms of your ability to come back, or tomato?
It sure didn't feel like it at the time. I would say probably yes, that was helpful. But at the time, it was just the feeling of not being capable or competent, even in taking the kind of breath you need to play. It was a little shocking. So, but again, everything's cool. But again, don't recommend it. Don't do it.
I'm sure that you have dealt with many students who have been frustrated about something specific, or we all have, or just overall. What advice do you give to them, and did you have to use that same advice for this? I mean, this is obviously much more substantial than I just can't crack this line on an etude. I mean, this is like your whole life and livelihood and artistry and all that, but was it similar to what you have them do?
Well, yeah. I mean, the rule of thumb with teaching is always make students improve from what they can do. It's not like swing for the fence and then hit a weak grounder to the second baseman. It's hit sharp grounders to the second baseman. And then from there hit it over the second baseman's head. And then they're driving to the gap, and then maybe someday you'll knock one off the wall. But my thing was, it was like I just had to go from what I could do, and I found that to be helpful. Lately, in my teaching, I've been using, and I feel like, were you in the band with Brad Edwards, Lance, or did he? Okay,
he was my first tour roommate.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Lately I feel like I'm. I hate to say this, I feel like I'm Brad Edwards' pimp a little bit, because I love all of the books that he's writing. And
they're awesome.
And I've over the holiday break, I went home to Georgia. I was able to be home from my stepdaughter's still a senior in high school, and my wife is back in Athens, and they're seeing her through her senior year. So I was able to be home for 2 months, which was great. But in my practice, I was kind of in maintenance mode with practice, since there's really nothing to get up for as far as practicing these days. There's no performance on the horizon that you're working on. So anyway, I found myself, just using only only Brad's, but yay, woo, only Brad's materials. And I've been a guy all my life, and I know I always think I'm going to go to brass player hell for saying this, but I've never been a guy who was married to a routine. I've never been an Alessi warm-up guy. I've never been a breathing gym or brass gym guy. I've never been a fill-in-the-blank guy. I've always just started my day playing melodies. And what I love about Brad's book, especially Patterns and Snippets, is that it makes you play every key. You have to infer a lot of things that aren't written on the page. And if you do 5 of those, 1 ABC, 2 ABC, 3 ABC, 4 ABC, 5 ABC, you've done some pretty good work, in terms of keeping your playing in shape. And Josh Bynum, my buddy down at UGA, he used to say in brass lit class, he said, I think within 10 years, patterns and snippets is going to be, for a lot of people, the substitution for Arbans, because it takes you through everything, takes you through all the keys, which Arbans doesn't, but it also gives you things that are in a musically palatable and pleasant manner of playing things. So you're doing work, but it feels like you're playing melodies. It's like I told Brad, I said the Lip Slurs melody book, I said it's like giving your dog giving him his medicine in a piece of Velveeta. You only think that the dog only thinks they're getting cheese, but really they're getting something that's very good for them.
They think they're getting cheese, but they're actually getting Velveeta.
I love that they called it in the song. They called it processed cheese spread. I mean, that to me seems like if you don't just call it cheese, like the lawyers were worried, right? I think.
Yeah, well, they knew, yeah. They knew.
A lot of our young people don't even know the song, which is that's a good song. It's a good song.
No. So anyway, I digress a little bit, but I found that my thing lately with my teaching is I think it's really important to do simple things very, very well. And I think that a lot of people forget that, and they want to go out and play the Cosma, or they want to go out and play something. And it's what my old buddy Ross Cohen used to always call frosting the cake before it was baked,
Ooh.
So I think it's really important to be able to do simple things well, and then you'll grow from there. So that's where I've been lately with my teaching.
Well, speaking of frosting the cake, let's talk about Duquesne University.
I thought you were going to talk about my aortic valve.
Don't you ruin cake for me, Zerkel. Don't you ruin cake. This is the worst interview we've ever had.
There goes Cake. He's coming for coffee next. So the Mary Pappard School of Music at Duquesne University in beautiful and sunny Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is a fine institution who's been supporting this show for many, many years, and we appreciate that. We would like to encourage you to click on the link in the show notes.
We insist.
Below. We insist. In fact, please do it now. Okay, now that you've done so, you know that link takes you to a page that tells you all of the ways that you can be involved with playing a brass instrument at Duquesne University, who you can study with, the ensembles that will exist when the world goes back to whatever the world goes back to. So please click on the link to show your thanks for their support of our show, and very, very special thanks to Jim Velveeta Ida Nova for making this possible.
Lance, I have to thank you for a product of Duquesne University when you sent me Fernando Dados for his DMA.
How about that?
Yeah, I learned
that?
I learned a ton in his DMA.
Right?
That guy. Holy moly.
That's one of those. If he wasn't a nice person, then it would be easy to be upset with him or jealous of him. But to have all of the ability to play like that, piano or the euphonium, or to write like that, and to be able to, he's just such a nice guy. He was just a gift. It was just a gift to have him around for a few years.
Yeah. He really, he kind of, well, I won't say he changed the culture in the studio, but by the time that he got here, he'd already, won his Bobo Award and won his Harvey Phillips Award for composition, and he already had an international presence, but he just got down in the sandbox with all my undergrads and played like he was one of them, and very humble, and but boy, a brilliant guy, so creative.
Yeah.
I often, when I'm talking about creative brass players, I think the two that come to my mind are Fernando, because he is, and then Wycliffe Gordon. And Wycliffe does it with colors, and everything, all the sounds that he makes. He's a super creative guy. And I'm sure that there are a lot of very creative people that I haven't been exposed to yet, or who I haven't had kind of personal interactions with. But when you get around someone like that, boy, it makes an impression. You know? Yeah.
What makes you? It's like you said. You feel like you learned. I felt the same way. It made me feel. It inspired me to try and be more, and to try and do more, and think broad. Like, okay, I'm on the right track. If this is a guy that can come down the pike, then we're fishing in the right pond.
Yep.
Yeah, that was great. Yep.
Boy, I'm sure that we said this on your first appearance, because I'm guessing that he came up. But when Lance and I met him when we were on tour in Brazil with Boston Brass, and he was teaching at this brass festival in Tatuí that we were teaching at, and we saw him give a recital. And, we were there, not that we didn't want to be there, but, we were there because you need to go and support the other colleagues. And, by that point, it was a few days in, like I would have rather have just been in my hotel or walking around Brazil, which I'd never been to. And from the downbeat, I was like, wait, what? Not just how he was saying it, but what he was saying. And Lance and I, looked at each other. We were sitting, in the eighth bar, oh, and that look stayed on my face for the entire hour. I mean, he had the room completely eating out of the palm of his hands.
Doesn't it make you wonder about everything that's going on in the world that we have no idea about? Like when you watch videos of Japanese middle school bands, and you go, what? And then you find somebody like Fernando in Brazil, and it's not like the last 4 years haven't done enough to take the sails out of my winds of American exceptionalism. But it does really make you think that we, in this country, we're so myopic about looking at what's going on here that we're just totally unaware of all the brilliant things that are happening across the globe. Yeah. And it's even though the world gets smaller because of the internet, there are still some things where it's like, there's things out there that we don't even know about, and it's cool.
I think we've decided they're not possible. We've decided this is a thing. It's not possible that someone could play the euphonium and the piano at the same time.
Right.
That was the thing in that recital that blew my mind, because it was 100% artistry. There was 0% gimmick. And if that's even 50-50 artistry and gimmick, then that's great. That's great storytelling, right? And great presentation. And I would still learn a ton. But it was a gorgeous piano playing and gorgeous euphonium playing. And he wrote it. And it was a piece he wrote for his wife. And it was it's like he made me feel the love that he has for his wife, and made me forget about the fact that he was playing the piano and the euphonium both I'll round in my favor, at least as well as I can play the tuba. Each instrument, both of them simultaneously, just the whole thing. And that's when it was amazing. I was alternating during that recital between doing the math of what I was watching and just letting it wash over me. And then I kept on flipping between those two, which means my mind was getting blown.
Well, that's what it's about. I mean, that's what music should be about, is transcending the instrument and making people not even, or making them forget that you're even playing the tuba or the euphonium or the black weasel or whatever you're playing.
God,
and just
black weasel.
The E flat especially.
Yeah,
anyway, but it's that idea. That's what we're aiming for, and it's.
Well, the other. So here's the thing. Recently, I had the opportunity to see a video of a young player playing euphonium and accompanying themselves. They were playing a jazz standard and accompanying themselves on keyboards. And it strikes you. It reminds me in the Stone Ages when David and I were in high school. I remember my whole exposure to the instrument was through Falcone. And so there was the Falcone record. I didn't know there was more than one at the time. I mean, I knew of one. And so that to me was that's what was possible with this instrument.
Yeah.
And then when I think I was about a junior in high school, or maybe we could figure it out, but it doesn't matter. The symphonic variants came out. The Kernau came out, and it was just on one of those like band promo things. They used to send albums out to all the music educators in the country, and it was like, here's all the new pieces, here's all the new arrangements, and here's this Kernau euphonium piece is on this record. And I came into the band room, and I always was, I'm the band kid, so I'm in there before school, and my band director goes, sit down. I was like, okay. And so he played me this piece, and it wasn't until then that it even occurred to me that there were notes above a B flat. It didn't occur to me that there were usable musical notes in the pedal register. Like, that was just, it was impossible. Like, I knew all of the notes. They were from there to there, and that's all of them. And then here comes Phil Franke, was a student at the University of Illinois, and I think he did the premiere, right? I mean, I think so. The way I remember it. Here comes Phil Franke, and it's just like, oh, well, that's different. And so now we've got Dados, who does this thing, and now fast forward however many years after that, here's this kid comping himself on jazz standards. It's like, okay, so that's what this is about, and that's where I think also, I think we're going to get to your YouTube channel, documenting great artistry, I think, is so important, in the same way that in athletics, someone comes along and breaks the 4-minute mile, or someone comes along and breaks this record, and then you have an understanding that it's possible to go beyond what you thought was possible. And it's just it's inspiring. It's and then you get a gift like Dados just comes through the door for a few years, and you just like, well, that's never going to happen again. And we've both been very lucky. I mean, I've had, I feel very blessed to have had some amazing musicians come through, and those moments, you just want to cherish them. It's really incredible.
Yeah. Boy, yeah.
I like how you just made Leonard Falcone and Phil Franke kind of sound like contemporaries. I appreciated that. So at least that's how I connected those dots.
Phil's probably happy about that too.
You know what Phil's most famous for these days? He makes, for retirement ceremonies at the Marine Band, he brews all the beer for the parties, and so he makes some pretty good beer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
See? Setting new standards.
Yep, there you go.
We Phil and I a number of years ago played an orchestra gig together that was such a cluster that both of us will be thinking about this, like when we hang it all up, like this will be one of the ones that briefly you're like, oh yeah, and then there was this one, to the point where afterwards I said to Phil, I said, well, I guess I could say I had never played an orchestra gig with you, and he said, I'm not sure that you still have. So yeah, that was the line. I was like, fair enough. So it was outdoors. It was spectacular. It was like kind of put your feet up and just watch it unfold. Yeah, it was amazing. So we got to have him on, Lance. He'd be a great guest.
That would be fun.
Yeah. So speaking of fun, Maestro Zerkel here is going to be one of the teachers at our Tuba workshop.
How fun,
right? And we will have already plugged this at the beginning in the intro. Well, this podcast is announcing it, but this is February 27th and 28th. And we've got Mike Roylance, Roger Bobo, Velvet Brown, Deanna Swoboda, Pat Sheridan. There is a Winning the Audition separate event with Carol Yonch, which comes included free with a couple of the tiers. And the Performer Pass is going to enable people to play in a class for either Patrick Sheridan or Maestro Zerkel. And this is going to be awesome. I can't wait for this event. It's like that's quite a roster of people. What is it that you look for most in a student when they are playing for you in a master class? So this is something that you've never heard them before, you've never met them. What is it that you're hoping to hear or to achieve?
I think the key to doing kind of a fast-paced master class, like if you have to do in a job interview, is to, be all ears to what the student's doing and be very receptive to everything that's going on, but look for one aspect of their playing that that you can help to make a demonstrable difference in the time that you have. You
Yes.
know,
Demonstrably better.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Here, I can take care of that. Yeah. It's very much true. It's just the whole idea of and that's how we build complete musicians, is we build them one part at a time, with the idea of, all right, let's make this a little bit better. Okay, now that you've got that, which is great, now let's take a look at this. And before you know it, we go from being, kind of unformed a little bit to being more formed as a musician. And so I think the most important thing is to listen what they have to offer. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for their sound, and I'm looking for their voice and their communication. And if there's something that technical that is happening with their playing that's inhibiting any of those things from happening, well, we'll work on that. But basically, whether you're auditioning for college or high school band or the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, what it comes down to is sound and music, and those are the things that are going to get you the job. It's not the other things. It's being able to convey both of those things and to be technically proficient enough to do it really well, but to have that to be what people remember you by. Many times it's working on sound and just trying to make things better, but it depends on what the student presents. So. But I really enjoy teaching in those environments, and kind of in the same way, I'm sure you guys do a little bit of this where you have one-off lessons with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I love teaching those lessons.
Yeah, me too.
I love teaching those lessons because you know that they're never going to hear your same shtick all over again. I'm just kidding. No, but you get the idea. You can work with them and say, okay, here are the big things that I hear in your playing, and in order to take your playing to the next level, these are the things that I'd recommend. And I think a master class gives the same kind of opportunity. It's a jumping off point. It's not a conclusion. So.
Yeah, the one-off lessons or master classes like that, it's an opportunity to plant some seeds, right?
Yeah.
That you obviously can't try to grow one or even certainly not four of those seeds in a 1-hour lesson or in a 15-minute masterclass slot, but you can kind of touch on a few things. But you're right, and I've seen you teach. You're really good at this. You have to have the student improve, or else they're going to get discouraged, and the audience is gonna tune you out.
Well, we've been to those classes. We've been to those classes.
We sure have.
Where it's like, oh my, well,
First do no harm.
Yeah, first, yeah, that's Rex's old thing.
Mm-hmm.
First do no harm. But I've sat in classes where I've watched the person teaching, and I'm go, talk about the big thing, talk about the big thing, talk about the big thing, and then we'll get sidelined by equipment, or we'll get sidelined by this or this or this, and it's like, how could you let the big thing go by?
Right.
And so I think that's really what the important thing is. And you have to be sensitive a little bit in those situations where you're clearly not being disrespectful to their present teacher, to their current teacher who they're working with. And I've seen people walk over that line. That's stupid. And it's like, oh no, don't say that. Don't.
Yeah.
And so you have to, you just have to be able to distill your message in a timely way for what's going to make the student sound better. Yeah.
The big thing reminds me of pedagogy class with graduate pedagogy class with Sam Palafian that I was in with Kelly Thomas and a bunch of others. And he would have a student come in and play, and then he would have all of us it was like only 4 of us. It was great. It was really hands-on. We had to rank I think it was like the 10 biggest issues with the student's performance in order. And
Wow.
then Sam came up with his own list, and he wasn't quibbling between 8th and 9th. It was just kind of like, okay, these 3 were clearly the biggest issues, and so if you have one of those down at number 9 or not on your list, that's not a good sign, just like to pointing out blind spots and things like that. It was really, really helpful.
Yeah, it's very funny. But like I mentioned before, I'm getting ready to do interviews for auditions. And one of the questions I ask students is, what do you think is the best thing about your playing? And then what do you think is the thing about your playing that needs the most work? And if they come in and they sound, they're not making a very good sound, and they say, well, I think my sound is my very best thing about my playing. It's like, oh, okay. I
think I need to work on is my modesty.
but it does give you a window into the self-perception of the student, and in a lot of ways it can be what we call a clue as to how that student will be to work with.
Yeah, that's a great point. So there is a limited number. There's only 12 performer passes that we are selling for this entire thing, and I anticipate that those are probably going to sell out pretty quickly. If you are interested, you can go to pedalnotemedia.com. There's going to be a banner ad at the top, but it's also pedalnotemedia.com /tuba-workshop, and you can register for any of the 3 levels. So we're really excited to have you.
Well, and I'm flattered to be included with Pat. I've taken lessons with Pat as an adult. I mean, with me as an adult, and I'll leave the rest blank. So anyway, I've taken the lessons with Pat, and he is a brilliant teacher. He is a brilliant teacher. Everything that I played for him when I was getting ready for an audition, I think, and everything I played for him, he had something really relevant and really easily fixable to do to make my performances better. And I mean, we spent about an hour and a half together, and I kind of walked out of that lesson going, well, that was great. That was just absolutely great. And he's super helpful. Super helpful.
Yeah, he is. You two will both enjoy this. I was building the website, the web page, sales page for this thing, which I'm 90% done. By the time anyone hears this, it will be obviously complete. But I had Deanna's picture above him, and I had her full blurb, and then I had him, and I needed just a text holder, and then the top of yours, and all it said was, I wrote, Patrick Sheridan is nuts. So above it was Deanna's full, and then his just said, and then I sent him a screenshot, and he just said, I cannot argue with facts. So that was, that was the full interaction there. That's going to be a really special event. I'm so excited I'd be excited if half of you were involved, but having that many people over a couple of days.
It is exciting. Thank you for the opportunity to be involved with it.
Of course, Lance was against it, but I was, I said,
I'm stuck on I'd be happy if half of you were involved. There's another way you could say those words.
All I'm saying is that I really like that thing that Zerkel tries to do in master classes. So yeah, it's great. So Houchin horns, Lance. Tell us about the Houchin horn people.
I was meaning to tell you, Andrew. I keep forgetting. Houchin Horns aims to spread the joy of music through providing the highest level of products, services, and resource to the brass playing community.
Just like Zerkel.
I know. Isn't that funny? It's really cool. Oh, shoot. The other thing I wanted to remember to tell you was that Houchin Horns has newly expanded policies that make it easier to purchase and test drive the best equipment during a time when safety and staying home are top priorities. It's a 15-day money-back guarantee with free shipping on all new instruments and accessories with multiple financing options on all inventory. Terms and conditions apply. Are you doing your taxes? What's happening, Zerkel? What's going on over there?
My computer is running low on juice. I'm pulling out my plug.
It's like
I'm
polishing my mutes.
I'm doing my taxes. That's exactly
you know what? What that reminds me is that they do repairs and customizations in house. You can browse vintage and consignment instruments at houchinhorns.com. Free in-person virtual equipment consultations with our team of professional musicians.
Oh God.
Oh, there's the power sound. Good. We all heard it.
And oh, by the way, Dave, I don't know if you know this, but if you enter the promo code Junkies11 at online checkout, you can receive $500 off your purchase of a new instrument from Houchin Horns. So very, very special thanks to Houchin Horns. Very special thanks to Dave Zerkel for providing soundtrack to that ad. And now, back to the Brass Junkies.
Thank you. I felt like that was like a duet there. It was like Lance reading the spot and Zerkel like moving furniture. So Tuba Etude Library. This is something that you just he just like casually announced on Facebook the other day. He's like, so I've recorded 100 etudes over the last week. And I was like, I was going to comment like, oh, you could only record 100. You're starting to lose your fastball. But then I remembered that the internet doesn't get jokes, and somebody would think I was being mean to you. So I was like, I'll tell him to his face. So, but this is awesome, and you sound incredible, and this is a great resource. Tell us about it.
Well, look, I mean, the fact of the matter is that I'm, you know, I was thinking about this a little bit. I'm never going to be a home run hitter. It's like, you know, the old, I think it was Glavine and one of the other Atlanta Aces did a Nike ad a little while ago called "Chicks Dig the Long Ball." Now
Maddox,
you can't,
I think, right?
You can't say that in 2021. But for me, it's so much of the fascination with brass playing and what shows up online as like, check me out, has a lot to do with doing really impossible things like playing incredibly low or incredibly loud or incredibly this or incredibly fast. And, you know, I'm not that guy. I'm like, you know, I'm like the Rod Carew. No one went to batting practice to see Rod Carew because they knew they weren't going to go get any home run balls over the fence. But if they were really wanting to see how to hit a ball, they would watch Rod Carew or Tony Gwynn do batting practice as opposed to watching McGuire or Sosa do batting practice. You know, and so, and let's face it, the number of major leaguers that hit more than 40 home runs in a year, that's maybe 4% of major league batters that hit over 40 home runs a year. And there are 96% of the other guys that are good enough to play in the league, you know? And so by doing these etudes and providing just kind of an example, they're not definitive. I take some dumbass breaths in these things.
I've written a few of those down, by the way. I'm going to email them to you once I get them all together.
Just put them on TubeNet. So anyway,
so my username on TubeNet, by the way, is Zerkel Hater, but it's with an 8. So yeah.
So anyway, my goal. No one's gonna when I'm all done and people look at my career, they're not going to go, man, that guy was a monster player. But what I want to provide is a legacy that is going to be helpful to the next generation of people coming up. And I, you know, I've got good years, knock wood, I've got good years of tuba playing ahead of me. And one of the things that I'd like to do between now and my last note on the tuba is to try to record the entire standard canon of tuba etudes, to have a library that people for generations forward will be able to use and get an idea. And they'll get it with a good sound, and they'll get it with a sense of music, but no one's going to listen to those and go, man, that playing is phenomenal, you know? And that's like, you know, and so I would rather be Rod Carew or Tony Gwynn, you know, and have to do the things that I need to do really well, to, you know, and then have that as an example for players coming up. You know, so, you know, I have all the mad respect in the world for people who can play fast and people who can play loud and people who can play low. And I envy them at times. But I just realized that at my age, that's not a skill set that's going to develop in me suddenly, you know. And so what I want to do is I just want to make sure that I can I can provide an example of what playing big tuba is like for kids who have big tubas in their lap, you know, and that's was like the whole Tuba Helper CD. That was the whole idea behind that. It's because they can listen to great tuba players, but none of them were playing big tubas when they were playing those pieces. And that's what a high school kid has in their hand. They've got a B flat or a C tuba. So it's like, how does somebody who plays kind of similar equipment to what I play, can I have a model of somebody doing that so I can help myself move forward a little bit? So it's fun to do, and it's really, what's the other part of it is it keeps my playing really honest. You know, it's like, you know, to sit down and do, you know, like, I think before we met this morning, I think I did 4 Bordonis this morning, and just to be able to kind of plow through and to be able to play things front to back and with, you know, with no major defects except for my dumbass breaths that I take sometimes. It's good for my playing. It keeps me sharp, you know.
Oh. How much time did or do you think about? You know, I think we're basically maybe exactly the same age, and you know, there's a point at which you decide there are things that I'm interested in or good at, and there are things that I'm able to let go and don't miss. And how much, if any, of this effort is related to the notion of, I mean, legacy is a weighty word, you know. It's like a cocky, like, oh, my legacy, or
Yeah.
But I mean, there's maybe mission is a better way to think of it. Was that part of this? Think mission, don't think
mission.
legacy.
Yeah. So when I interviewed for the job, you know, as they will do at a Research One institution, they'll say, "What's your research agenda look like for the next 10 years?" And so I'd been thinking about this project, and I was like, well, this is what I'd like to do, because I feel like pedagogically it's useful, and it, you know, see, as much as I hate to sound like a fuddy-dud, CDs are kind of dead, you know, and it's like the idea of making another physical product of CDs or CD, it just doesn't, it has very limited appeal to me. And people are getting information now from YouTube. People are getting information now from the World Wide Web as opposed to hard products. And so my attitude was, in what way can I disseminate? Here's a big academic word. In what word can I disseminate my research that will have an impact on or an effect on the playing of the younger kids? And this to me made the most sense.
I mean, we don't have to dwell on this. I read there's a book by David Brooks called The Second Mountain, I think is what it's called, and it sort of talks about this phenomenon where, you know, the first mountain that you climb is all the aspirational stuff and building your career and establishing your reputation and building, you know, having a family and getting the house and the car and all this stuff, and then somewhere around, it can hit people at different times, but at around our age, this notion of the second mountain becomes interesting. And so that's where sometimes people will get really involved with some sort of nonprofit, or they'll start a nonprofit, or it could be that they go internal, and it's about, you know, really strengthening their social ties or their family roots. And it's just sort of interesting. I'm there, you know, so I'm thinking about these sorts of things, and it was just really interesting for me to see you take on a thing like this. I think it's just an interesting place, and I really appreciate that it isn't a faster, higher, louder thing. You know, it's like, what does the universe need, and this is that thing. Not what's satisfying to me, but what's the universe need. And the universe needs a documentation of these etudes, I think. I mean, I think what you're doing has value, and I think you're right that people will look at them for years to come as an example of, oh, well, if you need to know what that one sounds like, just pop it into YouTube, and then you can hear what that one sounds like. So
yeah, that's the goal, and that's, I'll read that book, Lance, because that's exactly where I am these days. And you know, for really frank, it's important in the job that I have that it still have a tie to my playing and to the tuba, because I have to be productive in that way for my job. But in a lot of ways, my attitude has changed about taking care of things that are most important to you.
Hmm.
And we do. I mean, we do all strive, when we're younger, and I feel like I've just had a million lucky bounces in order to be even a little bit successful in this business. And I think those, if you're not striving, those lucky bounces sometimes go right by you and you don't pay attention to them.
Yep.
So, but I'm with you, as kind of a guy who's kind of on the back nine. I kind of look at the idea of how do I attain proper balance with everything, and how do I make my daily living involved with doing something that's good, you
Hmm.
know, good for my family, good for my students, good for the community, good for the musical community, good for any other thing. So I think that's where my values are presently. But I'll look forward to reading that book.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's pretty powerful. Sure.
Thanks
Yeah.
for the recommendation.
Yeah. We can be deep. See, it's not all fart
Hey, you want to
jokes.
know another book that you should pick up
I do.
is Whiff Rudd's new book, Side by Side.
I've heard that that's great.
Oh my God, it makes me feel like I'm in the Pee Wee leagues of teaching. He's just so thoughtful, and he's um, so articulate about how to build a great studio culture and the things that matter, the things that we don't even think about that matter a lot to developing a really healthy studio and really healthy relationships with students. I can't recommend this book highly enough. It's a great book.
We should have him on to talk about that.
Oh,
Great
you
idea.
would, and he's a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
He-
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, there you go. I want to circle back to legacy here to close things. As I mentioned at the top, we lost a dear colleague this week, Dennis Askew, which was just a complete shock to everybody. I mean, he went to Chick-fil-A that morning to get
oh,
breakfast for he and his wife. I mean, it was like any other day, and then he ended up not feeling well, went to the hospital, passed away, all the same day. And I just wanted to for us to talk very. Actually, sorry, before I forget, there is a scholarship that has been set up at UNCG, University of North Carolina, Greensboro, which we will link to in the show notes. Which his wife Kim is attempting to raise $50,000, and there's already a whole bunch. But even if you can give $5 through this Facebook fundraiser, and her post is public, so even if you are not friends with Kim, then you can donate to that. And please do if you are able. I think they're trying to get something that's endowed and that can keep going, because he was obviously, UNCG, and more specifically the students at UNCG, were just an enormous part of his life, and he was an enormous part of their lives, which you've seen the tributes just pouring in all over all over Facebook, which is one of the things that social media is good for. But let's start with you, Dave. Like, what are some thoughts on Dennis Askew?
The room was just always a better place to be when Dennis was in it.
Yes.
He was thoughtful, and he was a great listener, and he was had lots of great ideas about things. But when you were having a conversation with him, it was like there was nothing else that was going on, because he just had that ability to bring you in close. The idea of leaning forward. It was that idea with him, where every time I was engaged with him, I felt like, oh, this is like I'm having real talk right now with somebody. And his concern for everyone that he encountered was genuine, and he was kind and effective, and just a great human being. You know, I kind of lost track of Dennis a little bit because he popped off of social media a little while ago. And I was happy to know that he was head of the School of Music at UNCG. When I did my little stint as president of ITEA, I succeeded Dennis. Now, Dennis was supposed to have not been the guy that I was going to succeed because that was another sad situation when John Griffiths died. And John was the president elect. And then Dennis said, no, I'll stay on. I'll stay on and do it. And the thing about Dennis is, um, when we were working on ITEA things, and it was kind of a tough time in ITEA's lineage because there were some other things which I'm not going to bore everyone with that were going on that kind of had an adverse effect on the financial stability of the organization. And Dennis and his leadership he was a great leader in that he didn't profess to know all of the answers, but what he did is he gathered information and synthesized it in a way where we could ultimately end up at the right place for where we needed to be. And so, you know, a lot of leadership styles, and you guys talked about this in your interview with him. You said something about that's great leadership, and that's what I would say about him is that he listened. He had no, as far as his leadership style, it was not autocratic in the least. It was listening. It was not asking for people their opinions and then ignoring it, but it was asking people for their opinions to help him come up with the right decision for whatever the situation was. And I know that his students loved him to death, and how could you not? He was just a warm, loving guy, and what you saw with Dennis is what you got. And he was. It's just so sad that he's gone. You know, he's a year younger than I am, and so what it makes me think is hug your kids a little tighter. You know, tell the people you love them a little bit with a little bit more regularity, and that's what he was so good at. I read Tom Holtz wrote a beautiful testimonial about his experience staying at Dennis's house when the ITech was at Greensboro, and it was so Tom, but it was also so Dennis, and it was just about his love for his family and how that came through with everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's I will miss him, even though we haven't had a lot of contact recently. I think our organization, our kind of culture in Tuba Euphonium land lost a gentle giant in Dennis, and it's really hard. You know, I think the last time we were together, it was around a time. I think I had to leave after you guys presented a recital at UGA because my sister had passed away.
Yeah.
And she had cancer, and we knew that it was coming. And then within a few months of that, my dad had also passed away. And my way of coping with those deaths, which were really important to me, was that, you know, dying is the only thing that we're promised. You know, it's the only thing that we know for sure is going to happen.
Right.
And that helped me get through those periods of time with my sister and my dad. With Dennis, it makes less sense. Dennis was going to die, but it wasn't supposed to be now. And I think of all of the people whose lives he touched, whose lives will be less because they no longer have Dennis in it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lance?
Yeah, I mean, I just miss him. You know, it's like I don't know how many. It's like we're at that age where it's like how many times we're just going to keep doing this. You know, and I just remember staying at his house and hanging with his family and laughing like crazy and then also asking him, you know, why in the world are you taking over being the head of this school? And I think he really saw it as a mission, and he thought he could do something and change the environment for the better. And he felt an obligation, like if not me, then who, kind of a thing. Not in a cocky way, but just that he saw that he had a skill set, I think, and he could help things. And we had a bunch of exchanges over this past summer with some really, he was really trying to confront and make deep, substantial change in the School of Music, and ask really hard and uncomfortable and difficult questions, and lead conversations where he wasn't sure that he was the best person to lead it, but he knew that the conversation needed to be had. And it's like, that's, how brave is that? And then I think one of my fondest memories was I was at a college music society thing. And as I am wont to do, I look for the knuckleheads, and we find a nice place to congregate and watch the events that are happening, and then kibitz like Statler and Waldorf. And so it was, I'm trying to remember, it was Askew and Deanna and me and who's your colleague up at Interlochen? I'm blanking on his name.
What instrument?
Tuba.
Oh, Phil.
No, not Phil. Phil was my teacher. I know Phil.
Yeah.
No, tall, skinny guy.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name.
I'm tall and I used to be skinny.
Anyway, teaches in Indiana.
Keep moving.
Anyway, so we're sitting there in this meeting, just acting like we act, like when we're with us, just the stuff. So here's 3 tuba players and me, and we're at this event, and Askew, and so we're just like kibitz, joke, sarcasm, and then he like raises his hand and has this incredibly important question or point that like propels the conversation in another direction, like is a really positive thing. I'm just sitting back there taking pot shots. He's taking pot shots, and also like he's like in the room as well. Like, how can I help this conversation? Which proves another way in which he was a nicer person than me. But it was just incredible that he could do this split thing where incredibly funny, sarcastic crap, and then here's a thing we haven't thought about, or how do we address blank? And so just to ask this question that like turns the room in another direction.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about him, is that he was entirely human, but could be he could walk and chew gum at the same time. Right. He could be warm, and he could be funny and hilarious, and I have lots of moments of hilarity with him that I'll always remember. But when it came time to do work and generate ideas, he was all in. Yeah, mm-hmm. And so he was he and I are both preacher's kids, and we would share those stories a lot. And I think that a lot of his ethos came from the idea of watching his dad being a servant, And I think that's where a lot of his, I think that's where he got a lot of his grit in terms of wanting to serve and to lead, because he saw it, all the time. Yeah,
that really resonates. Matt Lyon is who I'm talking
Matt Lyon, that's right.
Yeah, we were quite the quartet back there.
I bet.
One of my when I met him was at the 2002 iTech that was in Greensboro that he was hosting, and that was a really, really big event in my career, because that was the first time that Boston Brass performed at an iTech. That was the first time that Sam Palafian saw me perform with Boston Brass, and both of those things were obviously huge for me. But one thing I'll never forget is that afterwards, Dennis came up to me backstage, and I was 25 at the time, and I acted like I was 15 with a credit card, And I played the tuba pretty well, and that was like kind of the end of my qualifications. I was just like firing in all directions at all times. And he told me, he said, semi yelling it, he said, I want to be Andrew Hitz when I grow up. And it was like just the way he said it, he just had this ability to just like lift people up, and he actually said that to me a number of times over. It's like he remembered that line and said it to me in a number of instances over the years. And the thing that I want to point out about Dennis is that there is a large number of people in the music business who worked with him a lot more than I did. There's a long list of people in academia who worked with him a lot more than I did. There are a number of people who had way more hours in the same room with him as a friend than I did. I mean, it's just like, and it's not, none of this is a competition, but there's like hundreds, if not like low number of thousands of people who ended up working with him more. And yet I felt insanely close to him, like insanely close to him. I mean, there was just like, when he had me down to UNCG to talk with a music business class and to do, there was a couple of classes, like he was just like really excited to take me to this biscuit place, like that he was talking about for like 3 weeks ahead of time. And I stayed at their house, and we stayed up until like 1 a.m. when he was like, like just talking. And we talked a lot about academia and the direction of things, and about, and he wasn't giving me the trade secrets for UNCG, but just talking about the struggles and where things were going. And we he said we should probably go to bed. That could have gone until 3 or 4 in the morning with ease. And he was just so easy to talk to. And he was just always outwardly showed support to people. Like every time I was ever in the room with him, he was outwardly showing support to me and to others. And no matter how impressive your LinkedIn gets in the music business, like everybody needs support in an outward way from friends and colleagues at times. And boy, it was always very energizing to be in the same room with Dennis while it was happening and afterwards. And I say the same thing about you, Zerkel, where it's just like every time that I hang out with you, it's like I think about things that I should be thinking about or that I already was thinking about, but in a different way, which is healthy, and, question assumptions. And I also just loved, and this is true of both of you, that with Dennis, that we could be talking about real serious stuff, and then we could just be complete jackasses. And it was like, and we would both just our friendship flip-flopped between those two things with ease. So yeah, I miss him a lot. So yeah. Oh, and I will say this, I posted this on Facebook, but in the moment that my wife came in, I could tell something was not right. And I said, what? And then she told me the news, and and obviously I was shocked and stunned because he wasn't sick. I mean, this is just completely out of nowhere. And I actually very briefly panicked that we didn't ever interview him for the Brass Junkies. Of course we did, and I remember it really well. And I've quoted his "What else do you do?" line from that in many presentations. But like in the moment, I thought like, wait a minute, did we blow this? Because he's not exactly on the list of we should interview him soon before there's not time, right? I mean, he was nowhere near that list. And then I kind of felt a little sense of relief, like, okay, we did, and at least one conversation with, I feel lucky to have one conversation with him and Lance, that it's recorded. But
yeah, I listened to that yesterday, and it was lovely. It was great. I mean, it was kind of a nice way to close the chapter a little bit, is to hear him talking about the things that were important to him, and catching him in the act of being an effective human being. It was really nice.
That's awesome. Yep, I feel lucky that every once in a while Lance and I do things around here that like have value. Then there's all the rest of it, but
that should be our slogan, is accidental value.
Accidental value. All right. On that note, I'm not going to give the usual Patreon spiel just because it feels a little weird to do right after Dennis. But we are going to have Zerkel stick around for the bonus episode right now, and which is for our Patreon patrons. And yeah, this is great, Zerkel. I cannot wait to see you teach at the Tuba workshop. It's going to be awesome.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
And that is going to do it for another episode of the Brass Junkies.
You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.